Picture a raging ocean,
Yeah.
a literal hurricane.
Oh, man. Terrifying stuff.
Right. Waves the size of skyscrapers crashing down, tearing massive wooden ships apart, just, throwing grown man across the deck.
Pure chaos.
Yeah. The wind is howling. The sailors are screaming in absolute terror. And then imagine someone speaks a single word.
Just one word.
One single word.
Hmm.
And that chaotic, violently churning water instantly turns to glass.
Wow.
It doesn't sort of, calm down over an hour. It halts.
It
It
freezes.
freezes in place. It stands at attention. And you have to ask, how does a liquid like the sea stand?
That is a staggering visual.
It really is. Well, welcome to Reformed Thinking. Today on our deep dive, we are looking at the source code of reality.
We have a really massive stack of linguistic and theological sources sitting in front of us today.
We sure do. Dictionaries, commentaries, grammar books.
Yeah, specifically a comprehensive set of lexical dictionary entries and historical Hebrew grammar analyses. And our goal is to take all this dense material and extract the absolute best nuggets of knowledge for you listening at home.
And our target for this deep dive is just a single ancient Hebrew root word.
Right, just one. The word is amad.
Now, I know what you might be thinking right off the bat. An entire theological discussion on a single Hebrew root word.
It sounds a bit like a dry grammar lesson for first-year seminary students.
Yeah, it sounds like homework. But here is the thing. This single word unlocks massive theological weight regarding God's sovereignty.
Oh, absolutely.
It shows us our posture in worship and the absolute certainty of divine decrees.
Which is huge for our tradition.
Right. For those of us who adhere to the theology of the Westminster Confession, understanding a word like amad gives you a completely fresh lens for reading the Old Testament.
It really does. It takes passing phrases and turns them into striking declarations of God's authority.
I like to think of it like looking at the source code of a website.
Oh, that's a good analogy. Break that down.
Well, when you browse the internet, you just see the images. You see the text, the shiny buttons.
The front end.
Right, the front end.
Yeah.
But if you right-click and view the source code, you see the hidden structures. You see the brackets, the HTML, all the commands that make the visible text actually function.
That is a highly accurate way to look at it, I think, because when you read the English translation of the Bible, you see words like stand or appoint.
Or endure, right?
Yeah, endure. They feel like normal, everyday verbs. We use them all the time.
But when you drop down into the Hebrew source code, things change.
Drastically. You see the mechanics of how the biblical authors actually understood the universe operating.
Operating under God's total providence.
Yes, you start to see the gears turning behind the English text.
So let's jump right into the basic mechanics of how this word operates. Our lexical data breaks down amad, starting with its most common form.
The qual stem.
Right, the qual stem. Now, for you listening, if you are unfamiliar with Hebrew grammar, you can think of stems like a volume dial.
Or a perspective shift on a camera lens.
Yeah, that works too. The qual stem is the base level. It is the simple, active version of a verb.
And the dictionary definition here is to take a position, to stand, to remain standing, or to cease moving.
Cease moving. That's a key part of it.
It is. What is really fascinating here is how the biblical text frequently positions amad against verbs of motion.
Right. The linguistic history we have here shows it operates as the direct opposite of halak.
Which means going or walking.
And it opposes bo, which is entering.
It is the antonym to ruts, which is running, and also nafal, which means falling.
So right out of the gate, amad represents a cessation. It is the halting of momentum.
Think about it physically.
Okay, yeah. Like if I am running full speed across a field,
Right.
and I suddenly stop, dig my heels into the dirt, and plant my feet, I am doing the action of amad.
You have taken your stand.
Yeah. It is a physiological shift from uncontrolled momentum to absolute intentional stillness.
Spot on. It is a conscious physical choice to halt the natural order of your forward motion.
But here's where the text gets incredibly interesting, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The biblical authors do not restrict this word to humans choosing to stop walking.
Right.
The lexical data points to some mind-bending biblical events where amad is applied to inanimate objects.
Which brings us back to that raging ocean I mentioned at the start of the show.
Jonah chapter 1.
Yes, Jonah 1.15. So Jonah is on the boat. The storm is furious. The pagan sailors are terrified for their lives.
They are throwing cargo overboard, freaking out.
Yeah, total panic. And they finally throw Jonah overboard. The text says the raging sea stopped. It stood still from its fury.
And the Hebrew word there is amad.
And then you have Joshua 10.14.
A classic text.
Right. This is the famous battle scene where Joshua needs more daylight to finish defeating the Amorites.
So he prays for the sun to stop.
And the text says the sun and the moon stood still. Again, the Hebrew word used there is amad.
We really have to pause and consider the ancient Near Eastern context here.
Oh, for sure. Set the stage for that.
Well, to the ancient mind, the sea was not just a body of salty water,
It wasn't just a place to go fishing.
No, it was a symbol of chaos. It was a wild, untamable force that just devoured ships and men.
It was almost monstrous to them.
Yeah. So when the author of Jonah uses amad, they are making a massive theological claim.
Which is what?
That the chaotic sea is commanded to halt, to stand at attention like a soldier.
Okay, hold on. I am stuck on something here.
Let's hear it.
If the basic core meaning is human physical posture, a person choosing to stop and stand on their 2 feet, how does a celestial body like the sun stand?
Right.
Does this imply the biblical authors are just using poetic personification? Or is this purely about the cessation of physical movement?
That is a really critical distinction to make.
Because it shapes how we read the miracle, right?
Yeah. If we connect this to the broader Reformed understanding of providence, we recognize that the biblical authors do not view the universe as a closed system.
Right, it's not a system of blind mechanical laws just ticking away.
No. By using a verb typically reserved for a person consciously choosing to halt, the text suggests that creation itself is responsive.
It hears its maker.
Yes. It snaps to attention at the Creator's command. The sun is not experiencing a mechanical glitch in its orbit.
It is obeying an order.
It is. The sea is not palming down due to atmospheric pressure dropping.
Yeah.
It is standing at attention.
The visual weight of that is staggering to me.
It's a huge concept.
Just picture that chaotic, storm-tossed ocean suddenly hitting an invisible glass wall and freezing in place.
Yeah.
The waves are literally commanded to hold their ground and stop their forward assault. It paints a picture of a universe that is intensely aware of its maker.
It highlights the absolute sovereignty of God over the physical elements.
He's not just a clockmaker who walked away.
No. He does not just gently guide the natural order from a distance. He commands the natural order to halt, to take a posture of submission.
The physical elements are his subjects.
They are. But halting physical movement is one thing. As we move through this lexical data, it becomes clear that where you stand changes everything.
Where you stand and who you stand in front of.
Yes. We're moving from physical location to relational position here.
Okay, so the dictionaries highlight a highly specific recurring phrase in the Hebrew.
Amad lipnei.
Amad lifnei, which translates literally to what?
It translates to stand before.
Okay.
And the research shows this applies heavily to attendants waiting on masters.
Give us some examples from the sources.
Well, Deuteronomy 1.38 describes Joshua as the one who stands before Moses.
Right.
In the book of Daniel, Daniel and his 3 friends are trained in Babylon specifically to stand before the king.
Oh, yeah.
And in 1 Kings 10.8, the Queen of Sheba is marveling at Solomon's men, who continually stand before him to hear his wisdom.
So what is the gravity of this phrase? Because you're not just hanging out in the hallway.
No, this is not casual loitering by the water cooler.
Far from it. Standing here signifies being at the absolute disposal of a superior.
It is a posture of intense readiness.
Right. But it also implies a massive level of privilege access, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. You are permitted to be in the presence of the king.
You are the one who receives the direct orders.
And think about the physical toll of that. You cannot sit. You cannot relax.
You can't just check your phone.
No. You are rigidly alert, anticipating the sovereign's next word.
I think about the Secret Service. Or maybe an aide-de-camp to a 4-star general.
That's a great modern equivalent.
You do not walk into the Oval Office, pull up a chair, put your feet on the president's desk, and lounge.
No, you would be thrown out immediately.
Right. You stand. You are alert. You are ready to execute the president's will the second he speaks.
Your standing is a physical manifestation of your submission.
But it also proves you are in the inner circle. The guy standing next to the president's desk has more authority than a local mayor, purely because of his proximity.
That is spot on. Now watch how the prophets leverage this concept in the Old Testament.
Okay, where do we see this?
The lexical history points us to 1 Kings 17.1.
Elijah.
Yes. The prophet Elijah confronts King Ahab, and Elijah does not introduce himself as a concerned citizen of Israel.
He doesn't say, hey, I'm a voter from the northern district.
Right. He says, as Yahweh, the God of Israel, lives, before whom I stand.
And the word there is amad.
Yes. Elijah is pulling rank on the king.
Wow.
He is basically saying, you might be the king of Israel, Ahab, but I am an aide-de-camp in a much higher court.
He is claiming direct, unfiltered access to the sovereign of the universe.
And his successor, Elisha, repeats that exact same phrase later on.
They are defining their entire prophetic identity by their relational posture to God.
They are. And this access is not restricted to earthly prophets either.
We see it in the heavens too, right?
Yeah, we get a glimpse into the heavenly court in 1 Kings 22:19.
The prophet Micaiah's vision.
Right. Micaiah says, I saw Yahweh sitting on his throne and all the host of heaven standing beside him on his right hand and on his left.
The spiritual host.
The angelic beings, they take the posture of Ahmad.
They stand ready to carry out the king's decrees.
The throne room is filled with subjects standing at attention.
Bringing this back to our confessional theology for a second, this sheds incredible light on the Christian's access to the throne of grace.
It is a beautiful connection.
Because of the mediation of Christ, we are granted the status of standing in the presence of the king.
Justification means we do not have to cower in the outer courtyard.
Right. We aren't terrified of being struck down by lightning. We are brought into the inner throne room, unashamed.
To take our stand as justified members of his court.
But mediation implies a massive responsibility. The concept of privileged access naturally bleeds into the most critical function of standing in the Old Testament.
Which is the role of the priest and the intercessor.
Right. The dictionary entries go heavy into the cultic and sacrificial uses of Ahmad.
And for you listening, when we say cultic, we mean the official religious rituals and sacrifices of Israel.
We don't mean a fringe group in the woods.
No, not a cult in the modern sense. We mean the temple system.
Right. The texts detail how Ahmad describes the specific duties of the Levites and the priests.
We see this clearly in Judges 20.28, where Phinehas the priest stands before the Ark of the Covenant.
Okay.
In Ezekiel 44.38, the Levites stand before the congregation to minister to them.
But it goes beyond just the official priesthood too, right?
It does. Genesis 18.22 describes Abraham standing before God to intercede for the city of Sodom.
Pleading for the righteous in the city.
Yes. And Psalm 106 talks about Moses standing in the breach to turn away God's wrath from the Israelites.
Wait, I need to push back on the imagery here for a minute.
Sure, go ahead.
The priests and Levites are doing incredibly heavy, bloody physical work.
Yes, very demanding labor.
They are hauling massive piles of wood, they are managing blazing fires,
Carrying out ashes.
and butchering hundreds of animal sacrifices. It is a messy, active, exhausting job.
It's a literal slaughterhouse in many ways.
Right, so why does the text highlight their stationary posture? Why focus on them standing still when they're constantly moving around doing all this physical labor?
Because the physical labor is secondary to their legal mediatorial role.
Okay, break that down.
The linguistic research shows that Ahmad is frequently paired with terms for drawing near or presenting something. To stand before God in this context is to mediate. You are standing in the gap between the holy God and the sinful people.
So it is like a defense attorney in a courtroom.
That's a really good way to put it.
When the attorney addresses the judge on behalf of their client, they stand up.
Right. They rise.
The action of standing up is not about getting physical exercise.
No, not at all.
The posture signifies the official, legal nature of the mediation. You are officially recognized by the court to speak for someone else.
That is a perfect analogy. And the grammar gives us a brilliant insight here regarding the Day of Atonement.
This is where we see a stem change, right?
Yes. In Leviticus 16.10, we encounter a new stem. We shift from the qual stem to the hafal stem of Ahmad.
Okay, let's look into the hafal stem. What does that perspective shift look like in the Hebrew?
The hafal stem is the passive causative form of a verb.
Meaning what, practically?
It means something is being caused to happen to the subject by an outside force.
Okay, so the subject isn't doing it themselves.
Right, so in Leviticus 16.10, we read about the ritual of the scapegoat. The text says the live goat is caused to stand.
Caused to stand.
Yes, or presented alive before Yahweh to make atonement over it.
Wow.
The goat does not choose to stroll into the tabernacle and stand there.
It's an animal. It doesn't know what's happening.
Exactly. It is placed there intentionally and physically by the priest to bear the sins of the people.
Think about the sensory details of that moment.
It's an intense scene.
The Day of Atonement. The smell of blood and incense heavy in the air.
The absolute silence of the congregation.
One goat is slaughtered, and the other goat, the scapegoat, is physically dragged forward and caused to stand in front of the high priest,
And then the priest lays his hands on its head.
transferring the guilt of the entire nation onto this animal.
It is a heavy, solemn moment. The animal takes the legal posture of the guilty party.
That is a direct, undeniable line to the Westminster Confession's teaching on Christ the Mediator.
Oh, without a doubt.
Jesus is the ultimate fulfillment of the one who stands before the Father on our behalf.
He is the substance the shadows pointed to.
But even more than that, he is the true scapegoat. He was caused to stand in our place.
Yes.
He took the legal posture of the guilty party so that atonement could be made.
He is both the high priest who chooses to stand and intercede, and the sacrifice who is caused to stand to bear the judgment.
That captures the dual nature of his mediatorial work perfectly.
It really does.
But mediation implies a judge.
Yes, it does.
And what happens when the mediator steps aside and the judge himself takes the floor?
That changes the tone completely.
Because as we look at the next set of lexical data, this word doesn't just mean defending a client.
No, it means delivering the sentence.
Ahmad operates heavily in a legal, judicial, and military context too.
Yes. The sources reveal that presenting oneself before a judge is described as Ahmad.
Like in 1 Kings 3.
Right. 1 Kings 3.16. The two prostitutes come and present themselves, they Ahmad, before King Solomon.
To get a ruling on who the living baby belongs to.
Exactly. But God is also the subject of this verb in a judicial sense.
Give us the reference for that.
Isaiah 3.13 says, Yahweh has taken his place to contend. He stands to judge peoples.
He stands to pronounce judgment.
Think about a modern courtroom.
Okay. When the judge enters the room, the bailiff yells, "All rise," and everyone stands.
Right.
But when the trial is over and the judge takes his stand to deliver the final sentence, the room goes completely dead silent.
The standing is the posture of finality.
In military contexts, the word carries a similar weight of absolute resistance and holding ground.
We see that in the book of Esther.
Right, Esther 8.11, where the Jewish people are given the legal right to assemble and defend their lives.
And the Hebrew literally says they are permitted to stand for their lives.
And in Amos 2.15, the prophet warns that even the mightiest, fastest warriors will not be able to stand their ground when God's judgment sweeps through.
Their resistance will crumble completely.
This connects directly to one of the most terrifying verses in the Psalter.
Psalm 130.
Yeah, Psalm 130, verse 3. If you, O Lord, kept a record of sins, O Lord, who could stand?
The Hebrew word there is Ahmad.
If God takes his stand against us in the courtroom of his justice, human resistance is completely shattered.
The prophet Isaiah reinforces this adversarial posture too.
Where is that?
In Isaiah 50.8, opposing parties in a lawsuit are described as standing against each other.
It is a confrontation.
It is. The dual nature of God's justice is on full display here.
He stands to defend his covenant people.
But he also stands to accuse and judge the wicked.
Right. Without an intercessor, without someone to stand in the breach for us, humanity collapses under the weight of God's standing judgment.
It is the ultimate immovable object meeting the unstoppable force.
When God takes his stand on the battlefield or in the courtroom, nothing can push him back. We either have a mediator standing for us or we face the judge standing against us.
There is no middle ground.
No, none at all.
This brings us to a massive theological shift in how the word is used.
Because so far, we have looked at people, chaotic elements, and God himself standing or taking a position.
But what happens when God decides to make something stand permanently?
Oh, this is where the Reformed doctrine of God's sovereignty just leaps off the page.
It really does. We are moving to the Heckful stem of Ahmad.
Let's shift the camera lens again. Explain the Heckful stem for us.
The Heckful stem is the active causative form.
So instead of just standing, you are causing something to stand.
Right. It means to cause something to stand, to set it up, to establish it, to appoint it.
What are some clear examples from the lexical research?
In Ezra 9.9, it is used for restoring or setting up physical ruin.
Building things back up.
Yes. In Daniel 11.14, it is used for fulfilling or causing a prophetic vision to stand.
And in Proverbs.
Proverbs 29.4 says a just king causes a land to stand, giving it political stability.
He stabilizes it. He gives it a firm footing so it does not collapse into total anarchy.
Yes, but the theological weight hits maximum capacity when we look at how God operates in the Hikathil stem.
Okay, let's look at Psalm 105.
Psalm 105.9 speaks of God confirming his covenant with Israel.
The Hebrew literally says he causes it to stand as a statute.
Furthermore, the texts point to Proverbs 19.21 and Psalm 33.11.
Which declare that the counsel or the decree of Yahweh will stand forever.
Yes. The counsel of the Lord stands forever, the plans of his heart to all generations. That is Psalm 33.11.
Let's tie this directly to the Reformed doctrine of God's eternal decrees and providence.
We have to. It's right there in the text.
The Westminster Confession teaches that God has unchangeably ordained whatsoever comes to pass.
Human beings try to establish their own plans.
We try to set up our own legacies, we try to build our own empires, secure our own futures.
But God is the only true causative agent who can make a decree stand permanently across time and eternity.
This raises a massive tension in the text, though.
Wait, I think I know where you're going with this. Let's hear it.
I am tracking with you, but I am stuck on something here. If God is the only one making things stand permanently, what about a corrupt king like Jeroboam?
Ah, yes.
The dictionary entry specifically references 1 Kings 12.32, where the wicked King Jeroboam appoints Heamad and the Hiphil stem priests for the pagan high places he built.
He caused his own sinful idolatrous system to stand.
Isn't that the exact same causative action? How do we reconcile human agency setting things up with God's sovereign decrees?
That is a crucial tension to resolve. We have to contrast human construction with divine creation.
Break that difference down.
Well, a human king, like Jeroboam, has the temporal, earthly authority to prop up a wooden idol or install a corrupt priesthood.
Right, he has political muscle.
He can cause it to stand in a physical, temporary sense, but it is inherently fragile.
Because it's built by human hands.
Right. It is subject to decay, to military invasion, to rust, to rot, to shifting political winds.
It is a prop. You can stand a broom up in the corner of a room and it is technically standing.
Yeah, technically.
But the absolute slightest breeze knocks it over. It has no internal stability.
That is right. But when God causes a covenant or a decree to stand, he anchors it in his own unchangeable nature.
That's good.
The stability of Jeroboam's priesthood relied on Jeroboam's military might, which failed miserably.
But the stability of God's covenant relies on God's eternal character.
Which never fails. God's causing to stand is a structural guarantee of reality.
When he decrees something, the fabric of the universe bends to ensure it remains standing.
It's permanent. It's unshakable.
That idea of structural permanence leads us into the final major category from our lexical data.
We are shifting away from the verbs entirely now.
Yes, we were looking at the nouns derived from this root word.
These nouns describe literal, physical anchors.
What are the primary nouns derived from amad?
The primary nouns are emad, which means a pillar or a column,
And the other one?
and mamad, which refers to an office, a station, or a post.
A pillar, the physical architecture of faith.
Yes. The sources point us to the massive bronze pillars of Solomon's temple described in 1 Kings 7.
These were gigantic structures that greeted worshippers right as they walked in.
And we see the pillars of the tabernacle in the wilderness, too.
But the most striking usage of amad is in the Exodus narrative, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Exodus 13.21 introduces the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night.
Let's unpack the visual on that.
Okay.
The pillar of cloud and fire is not just a floating GPS marker for the Israelites to follow through the desert.
No, it's not just a navigation tool.
It is the noun form of amad.
It is the physical manifestation of God taking his stand among his people.
It's the verb made into a noun.
The unmovable sovereign God who causes his decrees to stand has physically localized his presence as a towering pillar.
He is standing with them in the dirt and the dust of the wilderness.
I think about the sheer architectural weight of a pillar.
Yeah, describe that.
If you walk into a massive, ancient cathedral, you see these giant stone columns running right down the center aisle.
Right. They're not decorative.
No, they are the load-bearing walls.
You can strip away the stained glass, you can remove the wooden pews, you can take down the banners and the candles.
But if you remove the pillars, the entire structure collapses into a pile of rubble. The roof caves in.
And that is how we should view the presence of God in relation to the stability of the church.
The temple pillars were physical symbols of a spiritual reality.
God's presence is the sustaining pillar.
He is the load-bearing wall of reality.
Without his presence taking a stand in the midst of his covenant community, the entire structure of our faith collapses.
It all falls apart without him standing there.
Let's step back and look at the massive ground we have covered today.
We've covered a lot of territory.
We started by looking at the qual stem of amad, the literal physical cessation of movement.
How even the raging, chaotic sea and the blazing sun snap to attention and halt at the Creator's command.
From there, we moved to the relational posture, the amad lifni.
Standing before the king as an alert attendant in both the heavenly and earthly courts, holding privileged access.
We analyze the mediatorial and judicial weight of taking a position,
The priests standing to mediate, the scapegoat being caused to stand to bear guilt.
and the terrifying reality of God taking his stand as the judge of the earth,
And we landed on the sheer, unmovable sovereignty of God's decrees in the hypostem.
where he causes his plans and covenants to stand forever, manifesting himself as the ultimate sustaining pillar of our faith.
It is a breathtaking linguistic analysis, really.
It reframes how we read the text and reinforces what we believe about God's total authority and grace.
The lexical history leaves us with one final, stunning usage of this root word, though.
Oh, there's one more.
Yes. It points us away from the history of Israel, away from the tabernacle and the kings, and points us directly to the future.
Lay it on us.
In Daniel 12.13, the book closes with an eschatological promise.
The end of the age.
Right. The angel is speaking to the aged prophet Daniel, and he tells him to go his way till the end.
Okay.
He says that Daniel will rest, meaning he will physically die, and then at the end of the days, he will rise to receive his allotted inheritance.
Okay, but what's the Hebrew doing there?
Well, the text does not use the standard Hebrew word for rising up. It uses our word.
It uses imad.
He will stand.
He will stand.
Yeah.
Wow. I want to leave you listening at home with this final thought to mull over.
It's a great thought to end on.
The ultimate goal of the Christian faith is not floating around in ether like a disembodied spirit.
No, it is not an abstract, formless existence.
The promise given to Daniel is the promise given to all who are hidden in Christ the mediator.
You will be resurrected to take your assigned, justified stand before the living God in the new creation.
You will take your permanent position in his presence, fully alert, fully alive.
It circles back to where we started today.
It really does.
The source code of our faith dictates that when the final chapter is written, we will not fall under judgment, we will not flee in terror.
We will stand.
We will stand.
Thank you for joining this deep dive of Reformed thinking. Keep reading your Bibles with a close eye on the text, looking for the source code beneath the surface, and we will see you next time.